rather than tell you about some projects that I've already completed, which is quite a few, instead, what I want to do tonight, I want to talk about a work in progress, which is not due to be completed until July. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to show you a selection of what might look like random clips from the project. And hopefully, you can get an overview of where it started and how things have developed and where it might go next. Oh, yeah, that's it, isn't it? Laptop. I think my hands are that cold. It thinks my hand's dead. It's not working. So the whole project contains about 15 hours worth of video, and it's inspired by a film called Whistle Down the Wind, which was filmed in early 1961 and premiered in London just a few months later on the 20th of July. It was filmed around Pendle Hill in East Lancs, where I live, and starred Hayley Mills, Alan Bates, and several local non-acting school children, selected by the directors Brian Forbes and Richard Attenborough. So, basically, to give you a bit of an idea of what I did on the project, I invited members of the community to tell me what they could remember about the film Whistle Down the Wind. Here is June and Dorothy telling us what the film is about. I first met Dorothy when she was called Dot back in 1984. And my hand's gone dead again. Oh, there we are. Yeah, back in 1980s when she was a cleaner at a pub where I worked as a barman. She's now a local councillor and has just had an operation on her eye to remove a cataract. She's the one on the right.
It's about a young girl that found a man hiding in her father's barn. She said, she came upon him, he said, Jesus Christ. She thought it was Jesus Christ.
All right, you get the gist, don't you? Right. This next clip, it's Jim, who's famous in Cong for his long-standing vegetarian cafe called Jim's Caff. Here he is explaining when he first saw the movie back in the 60s at our local Hippodrome Theatre, which coincidentally is directly across the road from his cafe. He's referring to two ladies sat behind him and his friend in the theatre.
It seems like they must not have been to pictures for a long time, because film starts and it's in black and white, and it's pretty silent, you know, apart from music, but first few minutes. So it trundles along. Then suddenly one of these women says, "Oh, is it not a talkie?"
This is going to take a while. I hadn't calculated in laughter. Right, this is my Uncle Bernard, my mum's brother. He's just retired from being local lollipop man, and he saw the film somewhere else.
I saw it at Grand Hotel in Nelson. I think it was 1961. Could be say it might be 62.
And this is Sharon, who grew up believing that her dad was actually in the film. Anyhow, since then we've figured out that it's mathematically impossible for him to have been in the film, given his age. Here she is, telling us another one of his stories.
I'm quite adamant that it were local children that were involved from like Downham, Chatburn, and I do think that they had some kind of strange way of, they just like lined them all up, the kids, and went, you, and you.
And this is Pauline, who used to be my cousin when I were at school. She's not anymore.
I reckon there must have been at least 100 plus kids in that scene.
There were some other participants as well, who also remembered lots and lots of children on Pendle Hill. And the project started to develop around those memories of the film. rather than the film itself. So on a cold Sunday morning, last November, basically I put an invite out to people to join me for a walk up Pendle Hill, inspired by one of the memories. 27 people and one dog turned up, including the little girl who played Hayley Mills's sister in the original film. There she were, in her wellies. Anyway, when we set off walking, she started to tell me about her experience of the film.
It was a practical thing, having to be up and ready for 8 o'clock in the morning to be picked up. For 10 weeks, non-stop, every day. No weekends, no nothing. And I didn't get home till tea time. And the weather was February weather, cold, wet, rainy, and never being able to not wear wellies. I had to wear them every day.
As the project developed, lots of people told me about how important Pendle Hill was to their own health and well-being. One person even said that it saved their life. Here's Cerise talking about the presence of Pendle Hill.
And it gives you sort of a thrill of being outdoors and of being mysterious. I don't know what it is about it, but it has that presence.
The original film highlighted the difference between the world of children and adults back in the 60s. Lorette, who I've known since primary school, talks about the different perceptions of the man in the barn.
I think, you know, where kids see things, it's kind of total innocence. They don't see, you know, the penny didn't drop that he were a hardened criminal that he were wanted for, you know, what I can't even remember what he were wanted for, you know.
And June, who was in the earlier clip, remembers riding her scooter from Burnley over Pendle Hill to Downham, where they were filming in 1961. She's an avid autograph collector and remembers being told off by Richard Attenborough to keep her head down behind a dry stone wall as she walked past in the background of one of the scenes. The film really made an impact on her.
It was natural.
Wonderful story.
It was natural, and because it was local to our area, it got into your head and into your heart, really. You know.
Yeah.
Going back to that Sunday in November, when we marched up and down Pendle Hill, I remember the higher we went, the windier and colder and mistier it got. Hayley Mills played the eldest sibling called Kathy, and Diane, the lady who turned up in her wellies, played Nan, her younger sister. And the youngest sibling was a little boy called Charles, played by Alan Barnes, who actually lives just on the outskirts of Preston, apparently. Alan and Diane... Oh, where's the mouse gone? Don't know where the mouse is gone. Can I use arrows on here? Oh, there we go. These are better, look.
Okay.
That's better. I'll use those instead of that thing. Yeah. So Alan and Diane were selected from a local school, and many would argue that Charles, little Charles, stole the show with his cheeky one-liners and authentic northern accent. Despite being the youngest of the three siblings, he was the one who started to doubt the credibility of the man in the barn being Jesus.
Because he'd let his cat die. That's why he was mad about that, because the cat were dead.
Yeah.
If it had been Jesus, he'd have saved his cat.
He would, though, wouldn't he? Charles gives away his secret in front of the adults with a line that fans of the film just love to try and imitate.
Ask everybody what that line is.
Yeah.
You could have it one after the other.
Does anyone know what that line is? No? Good, because I'm going to show you. Lots of participants on the project attempted the famous line, and many of them got it wrong. Here is the youngest one, which is Finlay, my grandson, who captures some of that spirit of the film.
It's not Jesus, it's just a fella.
It's as simple as that. Meanwhile, the March of the Wellies continues, and reaching the top of the hill, the walkers begin their descent. During the initial interview stages, something began to emerge from the process, especially when I met a lady called Claire for her interview. Claire, who I used to go to circuit training with and who is now my asthma nurse at the local clinic, explained that she was expecting a call from a local policeman and that she might have to dash off halfway through the interview. Basically what had happened is her and her husband had gone down to her allotment to open it up in spring, and they found that somebody had been living in the shed. There was some food there, some mince pies and stuff, and there were also some drug paraphernalia, which is why the police were coming to take away the sharps.
Like I say, somebody's been bringing the food down here.
Right.
Just be careful.
Also,
There you go.
mince pies.
Yeah, somebody probably having the Christmas dinner.
Crikey, how long ago were it? So when you've been down here last? Is it
Last
a while?
time, probably, yeah.
So a winter?
Well, yeah, probably like end of last year. Because we've come to clear up and burn everything off and restart it and move it all about. And obviously somebody's been, just be careful. So...
And the thing about that is, about halfway through every interview that I did, I always asked the question, I wonder what would happen if some kids found a man in a barn today. And the participants would go on to tell me about kids today and kids back then and how things had changed and stuff. But when I actually asked Claire about it, halfway through her interview, it came out as, I wonder what would happen if some kids found a man in a shed on an allotment. And we both kind of like realised what had happened, that we were talking about this thing and it were actually really happening. So we nipped down to her allotment and filmed down there for the rest of the interview. So, to recap, I've done some interviews. I've created a memory from those interviews. And the next phase, so it's like 3 stages, was to restage the barn scene where the moment of misidentification occurred between the adult and the children. You know, where they think is Jesus. And I'd already discussed with a few of the participants about using the original barn, because it's still there, and knowing that we had Diane, one of the original actresses on board, we probably could have got the original barn to film in. But it felt like the shed was kind of crying out to be part of the project, and it was there, and Claire was happy for us to use it. So the next stage of the project, I basically invited people to come and find me on the allotment. I gave them a little map and told them to come and find me in the shed. And over 4 days in February, I allocated them all times, and about 50 people turned up, one after the other, about 30 adults and about 20 kids and 1 dog. And we were giving the children the task of saying, "Who are you?" and the adults the task of just replying with the phrase, "Jesus Christ." But unsurprisingly, when people came to the shed, people were curious about why we were in this shed on this allotment. So conversations started about, why we were actually sat in this shed.
So she just came down and...
She came down to open
Right.
it up after winter.
Right.
Yeah. And
Find what he'd left behind. Wow.
Yeah, and so they've been sleeping down here. So. You've no chance. Somebody was so desperate that they had to sleep here, or a general comment about...
In this particular shed?
homeless.
They didn't sleep in this shed?
Yeah, this is the shed.
Oh, this is the shed?
This is the shed.
Oh, right.
You know, and, yeah, and had his meals cooked. We've been doing some cooking, he had a little camping stove, I think. So, as you can see, the project started to take on a different tone than what it started out
I
as.
think it's really sad, isn't it? When you look at the shed and how dilapidated it is and how desperate somebody must be to spend their Christmas in here.
So this is Claire and her husband, whose shed it is.
I wouldn't have a problem with anybody living down here. I think the way it was done, rather than actually people actually squatting in here, that wouldn't bother me as much as finding dirt syringes and needles that somebody had used and just thrown on the floor.
And people started to offer solutions to people living in sheds and you know, the bigger issue of homelessness. This is Norman, who I just bumped into on the street, and I used to work with Norman years ago, and he was curious about why we're taking some cameras down to their allotments.
They shouldn't really be in here, because if they set hut on fire and they're asleep, someone sets hut on fire, you're right job to get fire brigade down here.
And David and his dog starts to discuss space and homelessness.
It's not that there isn't the space. We do have the space. We just very selected on who's allowed to use that space. So, and if you try and put yourself in their position.
Yeah. So in a way, it's the system, isn't it, what's wrong? Because the space is there.
Yeah.
The system that governs that space doesn't allow those people who haven't got the space to access it.
Yeah.
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 So just to finish off, by the way, it says 18 minutes on this clock here. I've got 2 left. Just to finish off, I'll just give you a little glimpse of the kids when they did their Who Are You bit, and the adults who said Jesus Christ.
Who are you? 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 Who are you?
And then the adults' response, because there's quite a few adults.
Jesus Christ! 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 Jesus Christ!
Jesus Christ!
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so to finish off, that's it, I've just got me 20 minutes there. Just to finish off, this last screen, basically, there were 3 stages to the project: the interviews, the March of the Wellies and the shed. And what I'm doing is putting them all into one big feature film. I haven't finished it yet, obviously, but I will do, honest. July 2019, those are the 3 dates which I'm going to be showing the feature film. And then on the 20th, the Saturday the 20th, which is in line with when it was premiered originally in 1961, they're going to show Whistle Down the Wind. And it's at a little community cinema run by volunteers. There's only 64 seats. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. The seats aren't open to the public yet. So if you do want a seat to go and see that, just email that address there and I'll put your name on a seat. But the seats will be going public in about June, I think. All right, that's it. Cheers.